people out there who are like, this is the best time travel movie that exists, and then there's people who are like, this has ruined the MCU. So if ever I was to make a video about that specifically, I'd have to fucking look into this for ages, because it's like so many factors and assumptions you have to make.
A few moments later.
Obliterated both its own characters and its legacy character. The world building is comparable to a goblin's mudslide. Thematically, it's as embarrassing as it is broken, and the plot has been reduced to atoms in terms of continuity. In short, yes, it's worse than Captain Marvel, and the MCU is going down a profane, sludge-ridden, dingy curse hole with no one making it out.
So I'm very eagerly expecting what will happen with Dune Part 2. And what Denis will deliver. And he's not made a secret that he's very critical of the MCU and just the general drift of a lot of cinematic culture trying to pump out these big franchise movies that have increasingly marketing devices. So we're going to hear Denis and then investigate a prominent MCU film in which many consider the start of the huge decline in, quote, cinema.
Of Dune, Denis Villeneuve, they get on the subject of talking about Hollywood in general, the current direction of Hollywood, and Marvel is brought up. And he says, and I quote, "There are too many Marvel movies that are nothing more than a cut and paste of others." End quote.
Ridley Scott has joined the list of big-name directors taking a pop, saying that they're f***ing boring as shit, and the scripts are not any f***ing good.
Well, I'm in a weird position because I don't think Captain Marvel as a film is the worst thing of all time. But it does confirm his suspicions. Because if you do look through it carefully, yes, they do quite a lot of copy and paste in that film. So it seems pretty obvious that Captain Marvel is one of the worst offenders in terms of the Feige universe, in terms of storytelling being very weak. But unfortunately, even though you can make a lot of legitimate criticisms of Captain Marvel, the people who hate it the most usually end up just saying a lot of blathering nonsense and don't really add to the discussion. So let's hear one major complaint with Captain Marvel in terms of its, quote, storytelling.
Years have lied to her and everything is bullshit, only to have those she's supposed to hate be innocent refugees, and she deals with that in about 2 minutes and moves right along. Such amazing growth and change. There's a lot of talk going around that this is a mid-tier movie, like a 5 out of 10, being that it's not bad but it's not great either. No, this film is really quite awful for both the MCU and itself. Brie Larson's delivery and apathy as a superhero is horrific, even for a plank of wood, and that's a shame because she's an incredible actress at best.
Jack, there wasn't a dog!
Well, I wanted to include that part where he said, no, he thinks Brie Larson as an actress is good because he's very vicious throughout this whole alleged video essay, but I'm still not getting what the major issue is. Definitely this is going to cause issues with the retcons they introduced with the earlier films, but that just begs the question, were those earlier films all that good? I mean, one of the films you're including is Thor: The Dark World. It's a film that is so weak and poor, even people in the film forgot they were in the film.
Character in the MCU, Richard, and what happened to him at the end of Infinity War.
Oh my god, I forgot that I was in that one until you just mentioned it. I was like, why is he talking to me about Marvel movies?
Do you remember the name of it?
Thor year.
You don't remember it.
Age of Ultron. I actually have no idea. I'm not going to try and guess it, but...
The Dark World.
The Dark World! I did know that.
Okay.
Yeah. I imagine that character will come back. Is Thor still going?
Some of the stuff was very weak with the Kree. If you are a comic book fan, you'll be horrified with what they did, and I am, so I didn't like what they did with Kree overall.
That Plank's mind is erased of her entire younger life, yet she is completely well-adjusted and quippy. Ain't that neat? Not to mention how she is told that the only people she has known as allies and tutors for her entire living memory of 6 years have lied to her and everything is bullshit, only to have those she's supposed to hate be innocent refugees, and she deals with that in about 2 minutes and moves right along.
However, I don't consider it a major problem that, oh, are we supposed to assume the Kree are all bad? In the comics, they are portrayed overall as fairly militaristic, fascistic. They're not good people. Captain Marvel, the real Captain Marvel, was the exception to the rule. It's not really a major world-building issue that the Kree are bad. If you just paid attention, even in this film, yes, they're portrayed as bad. That isn't a major shock. That's the twist, that it turned out they were the bad guys. I'm not quite seeing what the issue is aside from you not understanding any Marvel comic book history, which seems pretty obvious. But then we get to the major issue, of course, which is apparently Brie Larson is the real reason things have been getting bad so lately. Because, Brie is ruining the MCU and then ruining all films.
Competition for me because I'm the strongest, so it's just kind of like it's just a fact. It's not a personal opinion. It's not a reflection on what you can't do, but it is also kind of a reflection on all that you can't do.
It's really smart, and but should we have a fight?
And she can eat bacon.
I feel like we're fighting right now. I think it's been an all-day thing.
The sheer amount of hero poses in this film, along with describing her attributes, feels like it's compensation for her lack of emotion and chemistry with anything in the film itself, despite the criticism from every character in the film being that she's too emotional. It's like a bad joke. She's a flatline of a character.
Skrulls are infiltrating your planet. I'm here to stop the shapeshifters that are infiltrating your planet. They're shapeshifters. They're shapeshifters. Oh, I'll be out of your hair as soon as I track down the Skrulls that are infiltrating your planet.
I understand the basic gist that Captain Marvel is not the greatest film of all time. Okay, I think we could grant that. But is it the worst film of all time? No, I don't think so. Was it the worst MCU film? No, I don't think so either. Is it even the worst in terms of world building? This is a person who defended Infinity War and thinks Endgame is at least a 5 out of 10, but considers apparently Captain Marvel a lot worse, even though those films literally featured nearly the entire MCU, and in my mind, mostly did damage to all the characters. So, if we're following this general hypothesis that it's been getting a lot worse after Phase 1, okay, fine. But then, when you try to reason it out, well, wait a minute, that would include Infinity War and Endgame. But somehow, illogically, Endgame at least was okay, but Captain Marvel was the worst thing of all time, even though it is mostly a self-contained story. So, it just appears we're doing a lot of double standards. And to be fair to Mauler, he actually admits to this double standard because he does love the MCU Spider-Man and even admits, yes, it's true, they overpowered Spider-Man, but somehow he's still a good character for, reasons. And I do appreciate, even though he's wildly sexist in this video, he isn't a full-fledged neo-Nazi moron and doesn't posit any kind of weird communist conspiracy, which people with Brie Larson tend to do. So it's a pretty silly, ignorant video essay. However, the general points are fine. Yes, the world building is weak. There are definitely some iffy issues they did with the adaptation. And again, if he was a comic book fan, you could definitely find a lot of reasons to not like what they did. However, if just a film fan and don't consider the comic book universe, it's sort of all over the place. It's very erratic. But is this the beginning of the end? I would honestly say it's after Avengers Age of Ultron that things start to get really, really bad. I would honestly say Captain Marvel is either near the middle or slightly on the top in terms of good MCU films. Now that this tells us that good MCU films, the standards are not very high. And on that basis, there is enough to complain about, that Captain Marvel is not the worst thing, but it kind of formalizing the mediocre formula is not a good thing either. There's something we said about being hateful towards what Captain Marvel did, but being fair-minded to what Brie Larson actually contributed to the MCU or detracting from the MCU, it's a fairly minor issue, but I get it. We need some easy scapegoat conspiracy answer, so I guess hating Brie Larson will help us get us on the path to better science fiction and fantasy. I'm extremely doubtful. If we want to help, quote, better science fiction and fantasy, maybe we want to support novels and films like Dune, but that's me.
With you telling me what I can't do.
So, what about my themes? Well, there is a very overt theme of standing up for yourself and owning who you are. Civil War did the former much better.
You serious?